you for visiting the Africa Rising Cycling Podcast, where we share the big and most interesting cycling stories from across the continent of Africa and from around the world where African cyclists are racing and riding.
Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of the Africa Rising Cycling Podcast. And it's a big one for us because the last weekend in June, as anyone in cycling will know, is National Champs Weekend. If anyone's been on Pro Cycling Stats, you would have seen 40, 50 different flags all around the world for national championships, and it's a huge time. And for Africa, it's exactly the same. There were 11 official national championships on the weekend, and a few others that we're gonna talk about later in the podcast. Joined today by Africa Rising CEO Kimberly Coates. Hi, Kim.
Hey, glad to be here. My favorite time of the year.
Absolutely, and lots of races, road races, and ITTs to talk about. Kim, do you want to give our audience a bit of a chat around the importance of national championships to these countries across Africa?
So we noticed early on the importance, number one, of having national championships to see the talent in your respective country, but then also it's low-hanging fruit for Africa Tour points. And what we found is that there would be countries like, for example, Benin, that when we started working with them in 2021, they had like 8 points on the Africa Tour. And it was simply because they weren't doing their national championships. And there is a process for all of these countries. There's a very strict protocol with the UCI. So it serves an additional purpose of helping these countries understand the process, go through the registration of their national championships, do the proper paperwork, run a proper race, proper distance, commissaires. Like, it's all part of the growth pattern, especially for African nations. But should they do it, they, like in the case of Benin, jump from 21st place into the top 10 just simply because they held their national championships. And they're getting to be more and more countries, which we'll talk about as we run through them, that are starting to do it. And I think that's fabulous, because then you get to see all the young men and women in the country vying to be their national champ. And especially in the junior ranks, that's your future. That's your next gen.
Absolutely. And for a lot of these riders, it could be the only UCI race they do in the year, apart from things like the Africa Continental Championships, whenever they might be. But for a lot of them, it's, yeah, as you say, proper commissaires, proper timing. It's a great experience. And obviously for the riders themselves as well, right? I mean, picking up 50, 100 points if you're a rider for a continental team or a higher level team, those points get you a contract sometimes. It's a vital part of cycling.
100%. And that's, as we're starting to get more African-based continental teams like Madar and Amani, these points all count. And it is the bragging rights to say that you're the number one continental team on the African continent, and pro teams will be looking at those riders.
That's why we have an Africa Tour on the UCI, right? Well, let's get down to it. As I said, we've had quite a few countries have their national champs over the weekend. So the way we're going to do this is have a quick run through the road races and ITTs for the main nations using the Africa Tour ranking. So starting with Eritrea, which I think we always have to look at. I think the Eritrean men's and women's national champs is probably one of the biggest races on the continent, right? You've been there in Asmara, you've seen it.
The Eritrean national championships take the cake for sure.
It's a great one to start with, because I think it's also, I wouldn't say a shock, because the rider who won is a great rider, but it is a bit of a shock in the men's elite road race in Eritrea. Milkias Mekele took the national championships as a solo win, and he's a sprinter, which you don't see very often.
No, that was actually outstanding. And I'm really happy for him. I'm happy for Bike Aid, who gave him the shot last year, and then he moved on to the Ineos development team. We've been talking about Milkias for well over the past year, and what a talent he is. And, second and third place was no slouch. So having a win over somebody like Hennig or Natnael Tesfatzon, I mean, that's huge. Those guys are world tour riders.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's still recovering from a wrist break. So maybe that's why he didn't want to do the sprint. So he just thought he'd go early. I mean, amazing result. And we'll share a link on the podcast as well. But as we've seen on our social media, we just put together a big piece for Rouleur magazine on what we're calling the next 10 next gen. And it's kind of riders 23 or under. And Milkias was right up there on our list. So we've already got a 1-for-1 in terms of national champ jerseys.
That's fabulous. And he's such a great young man. I just adore him.
He's an absolute star. And then in the women's race, I think all eyes were on Mona Lisa from Canyon Shram. But then Susanna Fisea actually won the race, and we saw her at the African Conti Champs. I think she was top 10 there and showed she's a strong rider. But was that a bit of a surprise for you?
It is, but it isn't. I was there on the ground in Rwanda all the years when Adrian Niyonshuti was racing for MTN Quebec, then Team Dimension Data. And when you have a pro rider come back to their country for the national champs, it's challenging to win because everybody is gunning for you. And you might have a group of riders that will race against you, essentially. And we saw it every time. I think Adrian won every single ITT, but he could never win the road race because he'd have, 10 riders riding against him. And in the meantime, the one year Joseph Biziarme just like peeled off the front, and everybody was so busy trying to neutralize Adrian that they didn't realize Joseph was in a position and kept the win, kept the break. So it is, but it isn't. I think, Mona Lisa got the ITT. So she does have a national champ jersey that she's bringing home to Canyon Shram. So, I give some of these pros a little grace because it's tough.
Especially in Eritrea, we know there's that whole culture of locals against pros. So
Exactly.
that
Exactly. I
might
think
be
he did
again
it.
why Milkias went off the front as well, just to avoid that sprint finish. And as you say, yeah, great for
Exactly.
Mona Lisa. And then, I mean, looking at the men's elite time trial, I don't think it's much of a shock. I mean, it's Emmanuel Gebrigzabia. It's his 5th ITT national champion, so it was pretty much something that you'd expect. Good to see Henok second as well in that. So he's second in both of them. Knowing Henok, he won't be happy with a couple of silver medals, but it's still some good points for his team as well. Bit
Yes.
surprised to see Nathanael Tetsfatsian down a little bit. Mahawi Kudus was 5th, who you know very well, and he's a pretty good time trialist.
Yeah. I just here's the deal. It's tough to beat Emmanuel, and it's everything has to go right in Eritrea. I just always think every time we talk about ITTs in Eritrea, I think of the year Jock and I were there for the national championships, and Netnel Berhan, who I believe he was racing for. Oh gosh, who was he racing for at the time? It was a pro team. Anyway, he got there. The local mechanic had like pressure washed his bike and screwed up the gears. And so we're in the back of Natnel Berhan's dad's jewelry shop trying to get his ITT, his time trial bike to work. And we're calling Stephen Leger, who now works for the UCI in the development program. He was the mechanic at the time. It might have been Total Energy, I think. Anyway, he was the mechanic at the time. We're calling him in France. NetNow is running back and forth trying to get airtime cards to keep loading airtime. And then they're like, well, you can download this book. And we went to the US Embassy to download this book. And it was like 50 pages, of which we were only allowed to download 5 pages. It was just one thing after another. And in the end, we got the rear derailleur to work, but not the front. But we had it in a big gear in the front. And we just told him, don't shift. Whatever you do, don't shift. And Nando went on to become the ITT champ without being able to use half of his gears. So that's Eritrea for you.
That's amazing. And another story for the book. Whenever you write a book, it's gonna be a good one. If we work down the list, I mean, South Africa is next. It's a bit kooky because South Africa and Namibia have their national champs in February. But as we're doing a national champs review, we thought we'd just quickly run through some of the winners. Men's elite, I was quite surprised. It was Blaine Keek, who's a great rider, quite a young rider, that took the win from Ryan Gibbons, who's obviously, ex-World Tour. Byron Munton down in 7th and Stefan de Bod in 9th. So that was an interesting one on the men's elite side.
Again, it comes down to the pro, even though Ryan Gibbons is no longer a professional cyclist, he was just coming off his career. And as I was scrolling through, Ashley probably fell victim to the same thing. You've got these unknowns who are gunning for you and people working against you. And it always gives the most interesting, didn't notice that rider before.
Absolutely. And actually, yeah, Tyler Jacobs on the women's road race is a really good shout, because we've had a few comments from her about her from various people that she's one to watch. She was very close for the rouleur piece, but one for next year for sure. But there's a lot of noise around her, and we're hoping she'll join maybe the Shanolo women's team or a European women's team next year. But at 21 years old to have a national champ jersey is pretty cool, right?
For sure. I mean, that's epic. And to be somebody like Ashley, I mean, even though Ashley is retiring this year, Ashley's strong. We all know she's strong. And, you also had Maddie LaRue in there. You had, Candice Lill, who's been around for a long time. So it was a pretty good field for South African women.
As you say, and Ashley showed her class in the ITT. Looking at it, she was the only rider over 45K average. So yeah, she's still got the legs.
Most definitely.
And then the modern adventure guys are 1-2 actually. So Stefan de Bod first and Byron Munton second in the ITT, with Alan Hatherley from Jayco in third. So that's a pretty powerful top steps, right?
For sure. And it's great to see Stefan bring it home for his new team, Modern Adventure. That's really exciting. Hopefully one day we'll see him with Modern Adventure in the Tour de France. We'll wait and see.
And then back to the weekend. I mean, we'll go to third place Algeria. Start with the women this time. Brilliant to see Nesrine Houili on the World Cycling Centre team take the women's elite road race title. I think that was kind of something we would expect, but it's great to see her bring that home.
For sure. And she really, we had that great conversation on one of our last podcasts with the boss from Madar. And he mentioned how they had taken care of Nesrine when she had her injury and just kept her in the fold. And really, that's what it takes. And now she's come back. She's re-signed with UCI-WCC, and for her to bring home the jersey to the WCC is awesome. And I'm kind of curious, though, because people will notice if you go on Pro Cycling Stats, you look up results, sometimes you'll only see 3 places. It's not necessarily that there were only 3 women is showing up for Algeria. It just simply means sometimes they have not sent in the full results at the time. And, so those things we're always kind of waiting for to see if there's additional participants.
Absolutely right. And Algeria is exactly that with the men and the women. So for the men elite road race, it's a 1-2-3 for Madar. So looking at 235 points in the men's elite road race. Hamza Amari took the win. I was thinking it might be a Yassine Hamza sprint finish, but it looks like Hamza Amari went solo. So the 23-year-old took the jersey.
I know. That's really exciting. And it's so great to see Madar just getting some love. They've kind of just been going about their business, racking up points. They find themselves in first place on the Africa Tour continental teams. But, they just show up and they race and they do it well. And I've seen Yassine Hamza race. He was at the Tour of Benin a couple years ago. That man is a beast, just a beast.
Absolutely.
I still don't know why he's not racing on a Pro Conti or World Tour team.
But you're right. And then actually, he then took the ITT. So Madar did a 1-2-3 again, but switched around, and Yassine Hamza took the ITT. So it's another 100 points to Madar as well on that side of things.
That's huge. And if you scroll down, they also had a 6th and an 8th place too. So racked up a few more points.
We'll head down southeast to Mauritius. I think we'll start with the women's ITT. Were you expecting any kind of shocks?
No, I mean, there was a slight question prior to Kim LaCourte being at the Tour de Suisse, like whether she would have what it takes, like if she was fully recovered from her injury. Well, she showed in Switzerland she was, and then she rocked into the national championships and yeah, just rubber stamped that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just for data, I mean, she's taken the ITT jersey and the road race jersey. I mean, the road race, I mean, looks according to the data that she won by 12 minutes. So that's a pretty dominant performance in that one. I think it's nice to shout out Lucy. I mean, on PCS, she's still Lucy de Marigny-Lagesse, but we know her now as Lucy Meyer.
Yeah.
But it's great to see her second on both of those races and getting some points for herself and for the World Cycling Center team.
For sure. And, one of my favorite riders who's been there and, racing as long as I had been on the African continent, Orly, she's 39, going to be 40 years old this year, and just still solid performances. Just, she came off the African Conti Champs mountain bike race in Ivory Coast, and now she rolls into here in the road race in the national champs, and like she has just been consistent for almost 20 years.
It's serious, isn't it? It's wonderful to see.
It is,
Hopefully one
it
day
really
she'll
is.
get into the coaching side as well. And then looking at the
Yes.
men, I mean, Alex Mayer, brilliant, a 46K average on the ITT, so took the jersey there, which I think is great. It also shows there is this development in Mauritian cycling at the moment, especially on the men's side, of people joining Conti teams and decent teams.
Mhm.
And you look at that podium for the men's elite ITT, it shows that being on those pro teams helps. I mean, it's Alex on Burgos, Aurelian on Joyrun Hurricane, and then Daniel on 711. Does show these guys have got the chops to be on professional teams, right?
For sure. I think what was interesting is I'm looking at the road race, and Alex wasn't part of the road race. And I find it interesting that in fifth place is Yannick Lincoln, who made his comeback at the Tour of Mauritius, who hadn't raced in 5 years. He's the husband of Aurelie, and he's been raising kids and helping Aurelie grow a business. And, he showed up and rocked out of fifth place. So I think what that says to me is you have all these amazing riders like Aurelie and Yannick and Mauritius, Azzedine Lagab in Algeria, all these riders retiring or getting close to retiring that will help that next generation because they've been there, they've done it.
It's fascinating to see. And obviously, Jeremy is Jeremy Rabuda, who took the jersey as a 20-year-old rider. So that's a great win for him.
Huge.
I actually have some data I got from a contact in Mauritius on Alex. It sounds like he had a horrible race. He had two mechanicals, front and rear
Mm.
derailleurs on both bikes stopped working. And then his spare bike came off the support car, hit the road and snapped in half. So,
Oh no.
and it's an S-Works that I know he loves. I saw him on it in Kenya. And it's his old bike, but he really likes the position. So he'll be gutted to have lost that bike. The other thing with Mauritius we should mention is on the men's junior side, Tristan Hardy, who races for the Team 31 specialized team in Europe. And again, another rider we've picked out in the Ruler top 10 next gen piece. Clean sweep for him. Won the men's junior road race, won the men's junior ITT. He's definitely one for the future.
I think you called that one.
We try our best.
Well, it's like you said, we follow these kids. We watch them, we talk to them, and we're really involved in what's going on in their trajectory. And yeah, it's exciting to hear that this next generation is really legit. It's improved so much over the last 20 years.
I mean, that segues perfectly. If we move to Ethiopia, looking at the women's elite ITT, it took place 4 or 5 days ago. Siga Kase Kiros on Canyon SRAM generation, fastest in the women's elite ITT. And we always have to say and remind people that she's still only 19. So she was the youngest rider in that group. And the second place rider is 27 years old. So she is really on an upward trajectory for sure.
Yeah, she's, and again, moving over to the road race, she ended up third, still podiumed. But that's again, she's the one everyone wants to be in she's the one they're gunning for. So it looks like Bethlehem Denta was the one in the road race that kind of just peeled off the front. And but the thing is, she's also 28, going to be 29 this year, so not necessarily the future, but she could definitely be the future for coaching and for additional support for all those young women coming up through the ranks.
And then second place in the road race was Jerry Rader from Team Amani. Again, as you say, 27 years old, so an experienced rider, but to see a 19-year-old in Siga on that podium, and it's her first year at the elite level as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And then looking at the men's race, I mean, a huge field
Oh my
in the
gosh.
men's race, which is great to see. 35 finishes and 4 DNFs. And a relative unknown, I'd say, in Philemon Debay that won the men's race. We've seen him in the nationals. He was fourth last year. He's been sort of top 10, top 15. He's raced Tour of Rwanda a couple of times, but not someone we know particularly well. But at 25, interesting time to become a national champion.
It's just remarkable. And I think a lot of the Ethiopians, because of the war and the struggles that they have survived, it's just, now that it's somewhat stable and they're racing again, you just had all these kids that sadly lost 5-6 years of their career because of the conflict. And he might just be one of those kids.
The thing I thought that was quite striking in that men's elite road race, if you look at the top 10, there's only 2 above U23. So the guy we called as our sort of top male Ethiopian rider, Tekle Elameo, races for the China German team. He's still only 19 and came in second, and it sounds like the finish was pretty tight. But you look down that list, like 19, 20, 18, 20, 19, 20, 22. It's a good sign.
Yeah, it's very good. It's very good.
Yeah, I mean, and they're the main nations. The only other one I was going to mention, again, back in February was Namibia, purely because, again, we called Roger Suren as one of our guys for the future. Very young guy, but he took the national champs jersey in Namibia. So he's a great guy to shout out. But I'd say they're the main results. The one odd thing that we have to talk about is Rwanda. Fifth in the Africa Tour at the moment, but no results on PCS or the UCI.
It's interesting because as we're talking, I'm scrolling through PCS to look for results, and just habit, I look for Rwanda and it's not there. We did hear, through some of my contacts in Rwanda, that they apparently did not fill out the proper paperwork to have the race registered with the UCI, hence it not showing up on the UCI website, not showing up on PCS, which, if that is the case, that could be disastrous for Rwanda. That would plummet them down the rankings. It would affect their continental teams. We're still waiting for confirmation. But, the same thing happened to us in Benin in 2021, the first year we were working in Benin. We suggested to Romuald Hazeme, the president of the federation, to do his national championships, to do the paperwork, and something got screwed up. And I remember looking at the results just week after week, like, why isn't he getting any points? And he contacted the UCI and he didn't do something correct. And the UCI said, sorry, better luck next year. And
those are the rules, right?
Those are the rules. Exactly. Yeah. And that was, I don't know to this day exactly what happened with that, but Benin did not get the points. And so we rolled around the next year and made sure that we crossed our T's and dotted our I's. But, you would think a country like Rwanda would have that dialed in. They've been doing the national championships since we started in, I think, 2009. It was the first year. Yeah. And, they had the world championships and everything else. If this was an oversight, that's a pretty big oversight.
Yeah, there's going to be some tense meetings around that one, because I don't know my UCI rule book inside out, but I'm pretty sure you can't retrospectively apply for race sanction, right?
No, you can't. And I think that was our challenge in Benin. We didn't tick one of the boxes that that was mandatory. And like I said in the beginning when we started talking, was that it's so important for these nations to go through that process, because every nation in the world who hosts their national championships has to go through the same process. And I don't think there should be special gimmies or mulligans for African nations. It's
No,
just, these are the rules, follow the rules, do it right. Benin learned an important lesson, because after we were able to register our national champs in 2022, it moved us from 21st up to like 12th, I think, that year. And recently they were as high as 8th. So it matters. Those national championships matter.
yeah, but as you say, rules are rules. I mean, on that
Exactly.
topic, I mean, you and I had a very good in-depth discussion with the Kenyan Cycling Federation president
Mhm.
maybe 2-3 months ago, right? And the first thing we said
Yeah.
to him was, "Get your national champs organized and registered with the UCI." And it's wonderful that they took place this weekend.
Yes, I'm so excited for Kevin. I just remember that conversation. I'm like, Kevin, it's low hanging fruit. You can get points. It gives you that process. And I don't think Kenya has ever had them UCI sanctioned, at least that I can remember. So seeing them
Yeah,
take that and learn from that, other countries are doing it as well. I mean, Benin didn't have them until 2022. So I think it's just such a great process for every nation to go through. They should all have it.
absolutely. So kudos to Peter Kamau, who is the new Kenyan national champ for the men, and Kendra Masiga, who is the national champ for the women. And it looks like both of them won solo and dropped a lot of riders. So kudos to both of those guys for sure.
Very exciting.
There are and have been quite a few other national championships taking place in the last week or so, and another one for Ivory Coast schedules, I think 9th of July. And sadly, a lot of these are not registered with the UCI. I think for somewhere like Cote d'Ivoire, where you have the president of the UCI's Africa Federation, the CAC, the Confederation of African Cycling, who is the president of Ivory Coast Cycling as well. Um, is it a bit embarrassing not to have your national champs registered with the UCI? Like, what do you think?
Well, if you're going to be the COC president, I think you should at least have your own house in order. And it's not that we're asking these African nations to do anything special. It's the exact same thing all nations have to go through. And there's so much help. The UCI will help. There's so many avenues to get what you need to help you host your national champs. And here's the deal too. If you're hosting a race, but it's not UCI sanctioned, then there really is no excuse, because you want to be training commissaires. You want to be following the rules and doing the right thing to teach these kids long term how races are to be run, so that when they do get to Europe or to Asia, that they know the rules of the road and rules of racing.
And I believe you have some news to share on one of our recent podcast subjects, Jonathan from Rwanda, who wasn't in Rwanda for the junior races this weekend because he was racing somewhere else. And it sounds like he had a pretty good day.
I have to give a shout out to Steamboat Gravel. So, for those of you not in the US, Steamboat Gravel is one of the premier gravel events in the US. Keegan Swenson just won the black course yesterday, but Jonathan was here. He raced the red course, which was 53 miles, 85 ish kilometers, and he took second place. And I don't mean second place junior, he took second place overall. And he was in a group of about 6 riders that just all formed at the front, and they hammered it. And crazy enough, the kid who beat him, an American kid from Tennessee, also named Jonathan, is only 13 years old. And I looked at him against Jonathan, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you are really big." He probably outweighed Jonathan by a good, oh, I don't know, 10, 15 kilos, and
Wow.
towered over Jonathan. But we're super proud of him. He was obviously very concerned about missing his national champs, but he performed well at Steamboat Gravel. And next up, we have another gravel race July 12th in Colorado called Mid Gravel.
Thanks, Kim, for your time today. We'll put a link on the show notes we have a page on our website which has all UCI Africa races, has links to all the results for the road races and ITTs across all these national championships recognized by the UCI. So you can go in there and have a look. And obviously that links to Pro Cycling Stats, our data partner, because everything leads back to Pro Cycling Stats when it comes to
Where
data.
else?
Exactly. Where else? Thanks so much for your time, Kim. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Africa Rising Cycling Podcast. If you like what you have heard, please do share our podcast with your friends and on social media. Leave us a review or even make a donation to Africa Rising Cycling. All of this will help us to continue to bring you fascinating stories about African cycling.